It was 1984. In Rochester, New York, the Eastman Kodak Company held an absolute monopoly on motion. But that year, a concrete shock hit camera stores. Kodak, the undisputed king of chemical film, introduced the Kodavision 2000. It was a camcorder. It did not take a cartridge of Kodachrome. It wrote signals directly onto a magnetic videotape. The proof of the shift was physical. Department store aisles dedicated to Super 8 hardware were rapidly shrinking. Production counts plummeted. The massive photo lab networks, built to chemically develop millions of miles of domestic memory, saw their volume slip. The family archivist, the indie filmmaker, and the neighborhood dealer all faced a forced choice between the physical weight of film and the unedited convenience of video. It was a profound paradox. The Super 8 format was sharper and more reliable than ever. The camera still worked. The market simply no longer wanted what it represented. The brand survived, but the business model had gone soft. But the real story of Super 8 is not the story of its replacement by a television set. It is the story of how an empire built on light, chemistry, and 3 minutes of patience taught America how to see its own history. Every week, we tell the stories of the cameras, lenses, films, factories, stores, labs, and repair benches that once taught people how to see, and what happened when the market moved on. Subscribe if that history matters to you. The story begins not with nostalgia, but with a specific place, in a Rochester engineering lab in 1965. To understand why Super 8 conquered the American living room, one must first understand exactly what the market lacked before it arrived. Before 1965, the home movie was a machine of friction, mechanical intimidation, and frequent frustration. The standard consumer format of the time was double 8, often referred to by amateur photographers as standard 8mm. But the physical reality of the film was a mechanical deception. It was not actually 8mm wide when you bought it in a yellow box at the local drugstore. It was standard 16mm film, a flexible strip coated with light-sensitive chemistry that records an image, wrapped around a 25-foot metal spool. To shoot a simple home movie, a parent standing at a child's birthday party had to temporarily perform the duties of a specialized camera technician. They had to open the heavy metal door of the camera back. They had to do this in strictly subdued light, often shielding the camera body with their own coat, because exposing the raw spool to bright sunlight would cause devastating light leaks, permanently destroying the memories already captured on the emulsion, the light-sensitive chemical layer on the film. Then came the physical threading. The photographer had to manually pull a paper leader attached to the 16mm film, thread it precisely through a complex, unforgiving path of internal metal rollers, slip it carefully behind the metal pressure plate of the film gate, attach the end to a separate empty take-up spool, and ensure the camera's mechanical claw engaged the tiny sprocket holes perfectly. They would then close the door and pull the trigger. But the mechanical ritual was only half finished. Because the film was 16mm wide, the camera's aperture was only exposing 1/2 of the vertical strip. When the 25-foot run was over, the photographer had to open the camera door again, carefully remove the full take-up spool, manually flip it over, rethread the entire mechanism, and shoot the other half of the film backwards. Only after a professional photo lab developed the film would they physically slice these 16mm strips straight down the middle and cement it together end to end to create a single 50-foot 8mm movie. If the user fumbled the threading, the film jammed in the gate, tearing the delicate sprocket holes and ruining the mechanical rhythm of the camera. If they opened the door in the wrong ambient light, the edge of the film bloomed into ruined, unrecoverable orange flares. It was an intimidating, error-prone, mechanical ritual. The market desperately lacked a system that trusted the user simply to press a single button. In the spring of 1965, Eastman Kodak engineers in Rochester solved the mechanical problem not with a better metal gear, but with a plastic box. They called it Super 8. The breakthrough was entirely contained within the cartridge. It held 50 continuous feet of film. There was no manual threading. There was no complex path of internal rollers. There was no mid-roll flipping required. The user simply pressed an exterior latch to open the camera door, dropped the black plastic coaxial cartridge inside, and snapped the door closed. The camera automatically engaged the film. The true genius of the design was physical communication. The cartridge featured mechanical notches precisely cut into the exterior plastic shell. These notches physically interfaced with metal pins inside the camera body to tell the internal light meter exactly what film speed, or ISO, the measure of the film's chemical sensitivity to light, was loaded. The system automatically adjusted the exposure without human intervention. The amateur no longer had to understand photographic chemistry or complex optics. They only had to point the lens. The format made its official debut at the International Photographic Exposition in New York in May 1965, launching alongside a new line of cameras, most notably the Kodak Instamatic M2. Surviving retail catalogs from the era indicate that the M2 was priced aggressively to capture immediate market share. Introductory records suggest a retail price of just $39.50. This was not a luxury optical instrument built for professional studios. It was priced and marketed as a reliable domestic appliance, sitting conceptually closer to a household radio than to a Leica. Available reports indicate that Kodak designed this entire consumer ecosystem with a ruthless and brilliant corporate philosophy. The primary profit did not lie in the metal, plastic, and glass of the camera body. The real profit lay in the relentless, repetitive purchase of the yellow Kodachrome 2 film boxes and the mail-in chemical processing fees that inevitably followed every purchase. The early reception was explosive. In major retail camera stores like Willoughby's in Manhattan and across the vast catalog networks of Sears Roebuck, dealers found themselves selling motion to a massive demographic that had never previously dared to thread a movie camera. The professional adopters initially ignored it, dismissing the small negative size as drastically inferior to their 16mm professional rigs. But the American suburban family embraced it immediately. The system created a vast, invisible, highly lucrative infrastructure almost overnight. A consumer bought the film at a local pharmacy. They shot it in the backyard. They placed the exposed plastic cartridge into a prepaid yellow Kodak mailer. They dropped it in a street corner mailbox, sending it to a massive regional photo lab, a highly industrialized facility that chemically develops film and makes positive projection prints. And exactly a week later, a small yellow box returned in the mail containing a 50-foot reel of developed memory, ready to be threaded onto a projector. The camera had found its market. The market had not yet revealed its full scale. The true power of Super 8 was not merely found in the physical convenience of the black plastic cartridge. It was found in the optical and chemical ecosystem explicitly built around it. To understand why this specific format immediately decimated its predecessors and captured the American market, one must look at the strict geometry of the physical object itself. The Super 8 frame was physically larger than the old standard 8mm frame. Kodak engineers achieved this without widening the film strip. By drastically shrinking the size of the sprocket holes, the square perforations running down the edge of the film used by the camera's mechanical claw to physically pull the next frame into place, Kodak expanded the actual image area by nearly 50%. This physical change was not a minor technical footnote relegated to engineering manuals. It fundamentally altered the viewing experience. A larger image area on the film meant a significantly sharper, brighter, and more detailed picture when that frame was eventually magnified and projected across a dark room onto a silver lenticular screen. Standard 8mm often looked soft, grainy, and undefined when pushed to fill a living room wall. Super 8, packed with Kodak's proprietary Kodachrome dyes, held its sharpness, rendering faces, textures, and landscapes with a startling, vivid clarity. Because Super 8 was designed as slide film that produces a positive transparency meant for direct projection instead of a negative, every frame had to be exposed perfectly. There was no room for error in the dark room later. The camera had to make the correct decision the moment the shutter fired. The camera bodies themselves evolved rapidly to match the film's untapped optical potential. The earliest consumer models, like the Instamatic M2, relied on basic fixed-focus lenses. But soon, the market demanded serious optical complexity hidden behind consumer-friendly simplicity. The lens, the precision glass system that bends light onto the film plane, became fiercely competitive. While Kodak concentrated on moving millions of mass-market Instamatics through department stores like Macy's, Sears, and Kmart, premium optical engineering firms in Europe and Japan realized a massive opportunity. They understood they could build heavy professional-grade mechanical tools strictly around Kodak's amateur format. Companies like Braun in West Germany with their sleek silver Nizo line, Canon in Japan with the formidable AutoZoom 814, and Beaulieu in France with the legendary 4008ZM entered the arena. These were not disposable plastic toys designed for casual weekends. A machine like the Beaulieu 4008 brought pure cinema-level mechanics to the yellow cartridge. It was built from heavy metal alloys. It featured a complex rotary shutter, the timed mechanical disc that spins continuously, opening to expose the film for a fraction of a second precisely when the mechanical claw pulled the next frame into place, exactly 18 times a second. The price context of this sprawling ecosystem was crucial to its absolute dominance. In 1968, an American family could walk into a local pharmacy or discount retailer and buy a basic Kodak Instamatic movie camera for roughly the cost of a household blender or a decent pair of shoes. It was frictionless access. But a dedicated photographic enthusiast, an independent documentary filmmaker, or a wealthy amateur could walk into a specialized camera boutique in Manhattan and spend an entire month's salary on a German or Japanese Super 8 camera. These high-end units were equipped with heavy macro lenses, variable frame rates for slow motion, manual exposure overrides, and interchangeable lens mounts, the mechanical connection that attaches a lens to a camera body, allowing the user to adapt professional 35mm glass to the small 8mm format. This was the genius of Kodak's market architecture. Rivals could not easily copy, disrupt, or bypass the system because Kodak strictly owned the patents on the coaxial cartridge design. The plastic box was a proprietary fortress. If a Japanese or German manufacturer wanted to sell a consumer motion picture camera to the American public in 1972, they were legally and physically forced to design their internal film gates to accept Kodak's exact plastic dimensions. Furthermore, Kodak brilliantly placed the film pressure plate, the flat surface that holds the film perfectly flat against the camera's aperture to ensure sharp focus, inside the disposable plastic cartridge itself rather than inside the camera body. Every time a consumer loaded a new roll of film, they were loading a brand new film gate. Kodak effectively taxed every single home movie shot in America, regardless of what prestigious brand of camera was used to shoot it. The German engineers built the metal body. The Japanese engineers built the glass lens, but Kodak owned the chemistry, the plastic, and the recurring revenue. The format had successfully solved the problem of domestic access. The amateur photographer standing at a crowded wedding reception no longer had to act as a stressed mechanical engineer. They did not have to worry about light leaks, threading jams, or manual exposure calculations. They only had to point the camera, frame their subject through the viewfinder, the optical window the photographer looks through to compose the picture, and pull the mechanical trigger. The internal electric motor whirred. The metal claw clicked with a rhythmic heartbeat. The aperture, the adjustable opening in a lens that controls how much light enters, adjusted automatically to the ambient room light. The shutter spun, and the silver halide chemistry permanently recorded the light. The lens solved the problem of clarity. The cartridge solved the problem of convenience. The patents solved the problem of competition. The physical system was now completely locked in, and the true era of cultural scale was about to begin. By the early 1970s, the Super 8 format was no longer just a photographic product. It was a deeply entrenched physical habit that defined the American consumer market. The system had scaled to a level of dominance that effectively locked out any alternative definition of amateur motion. In retail spaces across the country, the physical presence of Super 8 was staggering. At Willoughby's Camera Emporium in New York City, entire floors were dedicated to the format. In the sprawling, phone book-sized catalogs of Sears Roebuck and Montgomery Ward, Super 8 hardware occupied prime. Full-color pages right before the crucial holiday buying seasons, even in suburban Kmart checkout aisles. The distinctive yellow Kodachrome and Ektachrome boxes were stacked next to batteries and chewing gum, treated not as specialized photographic equipment, but as essential household staples. The brand's reach extended far beyond the amateur snapshot. High school football coaches across the American Midwest relied on silent Super 8 cameras to record Friday night games, reviewing the plays on Monday mornings using variable speed projectors that could freeze the mechanical action on a single frame. Independent wedding studios, unable to afford the massive overhead of professional 16mm film stock, built lucrative business models offering motion packages to middle-class couples, shooting entirely on high-end Beaulieu and Canon Super 8 rigs. The format was rigorously tested and debated in the monthly pages of Popular Photography and Modern Photography, where columnists treated the amateur cartridge with the same critical optical analysis usually reserved for Leica rangefinders. In 1973, Eastman Kodak pushed the technological boundary of the format further, locking the market in even tighter. They introduced the Ektasound system. Before this, consumer home movies were overwhelmingly silent, accompanied only by the mechanical clatter of the projector itself. The Ektasound breakthrough involved adding a microscopic magnetic stripe, a thin band of iron oxide capable of recording analog audio signals, directly along the unperforated edge of the Super 8 film strip. The cameras required for this new film were physically larger, housing a dedicated sound head and an internal amplifier. The mechanical whir of the camera was carefully muffled so the internal microphone would not pick up the motor. For the first time, without requiring a separate, synchronized tape recorder, the American Family movie had a synchronized voice. But the true scale of the Super 8 empire was not fully visible on the camera store shelves. It was visible in the vast, highly industrialized infrastructure required to process the chemistry. The cartridge was useless without the photo lab, the massive centralized facility that chemically developed the latent silver halide crystals and stabilized the final image. This necessity birthed an entirely new architectural phenomenon: the photomat kiosk. Throughout the 1970s, thousands of tiny drive-through booths with distinctive yellow roofs appeared in the center of supermarket parking lots across America. A mother could drop off her exposed Super 8 cartridges from the driver's seat of her station wagon. A fleet of couriers would gather the film from these kiosks daily, driving them to massive regional chemical processing plants operated by companies like Fox Photo or Mystic Color Lab, which ran automated developing vats 24 hours a day. Millions of miles of Super 8 film flowed through these chemical baths every single month. The consumer was completely locked into an ecosystem of recurring revenue. They bought the camera once, but they paid Kodak, or the local lab, every single time they wanted to freeze a memory. The hardware was merely the bait. The chemistry was the empire. The peak cultural moment of Super 8, however, was not found in a specialized photo lab, a crowded camera store, or the pages of a magazine. It was found in a repeated domestic ritual. It was the projection night. A family would pick up a stack of processed 50-foot reels from the photomat. After dinner, they would set up a silver lenticular screen, a specialized textured projection surface designed to reflect light efficiently, in the center of the living room. The operator would unspool the white plastic leader of the film and thread it into an auto-loading projector, like the popular Kodak Instamatic M80 or a heavy Austrian UMIG Mark S. The room would go dark. The distinct metallic smell of hot dust burning against the intense tungsten projector bulb would instantly fill the air. The internal fan would whine, and the heavy mechanical, rhythmic clatter of the sprockets would begin. And there, magnified against the wall, the past was resurrected in vibrant, heavily saturated, unfakeable Kodachrome color. If this film disappeared, America would not simply lose another imported machine or a yellow box on a drugstore shelf. It would lose the chemical language through which birthdays, wars, vacations, weddings, and ordinary afternoons became physical memory. In a family living room, the camera did not merely record memory, it decided which memories became physical enough to survive. The physical constraints of the system were the exact reason the memories remained so powerful. A standard 50-foot Super 8 cartridge held exactly 3 minutes and 20 seconds of film, when shot at the standard amateur speed of 18 frames per second. That severe physical limitation was a feature, not a bug. Because the raw film stock was expensive and the mail-in processing required a substantial additional fee, the amateur photographer could not film everything indiscriminately. They could not leave the camera running while waiting for something interesting to happen. They had to wait for the exact moment the birthday candles were blown out. They had to hold their finger on the trigger only when the child actually took a step. The system forced severe, intentional curation. The father holding the camera became an involuntary editor. It made the memory precious specifically because the medium to capture it was scarce and expensive. Every time the shutter spun, it cost money. Every second recorded was a deliberate choice. By the late 1970s, this chemical ecosystem seemed permanently, unbreakably entrenched in American life. Kodak owned the patents, the labs owned the processing, and the American family trusted the physical object. The brand looked strongest at the exact moment its weakness became structural. The first crack in the foundation of the Super 8 empire did not sound like a sudden collapse. It did not begin with a bankruptcy filing in Rochester, nor did it begin with a failure in Kodak's chemical engineering. The first crack sounded like the quiet, static hum of a television set. In the late 1970s, the American consumer electronics industry began to turn its attention away from mere broadcasting and toward personal motion capture. The primary engine of decline was technology displacement, combined tightly with the crushing reality of price compression. The forces that would eventually dismantle the Kodak monopoly were not optical or chemical. They were strictly electronic. Companies like Sony and JVC introduced the first viable consumer videotape formats, Betamax, in 1975 and VHS in 1976. At first, the threat to Super 8 seemed non-existent. The early consumer video equipment was massive, cumbersome, and physically intimidating. To shoot a family video in 1978, a father could not simply hold a small plastic cartridge in the palm of his hand. He had to operate a heavy, two-piece tethered system. A heavy video camera tube rested on one shoulder, connected by a thick, inflexible rubber umbilical cable to a massive battery-powered VCR slung painfully over the other shoulder. Furthermore, the image quality of this early analog video was objectively terrible compared to film. The video image was muddy, the colors were smeared, and the resolution was drastically inferior to the sharp, vivid dyes of a Kodak Super 8 frame. The Super 8 camera still worked flawlessly. The chemical system still produced superior memories. But the market was slowly beginning to change its definition of convenience. The market did not reject quality. It redefined convenience entirely around the concept of time. The magnetic videotape did not require a highly industrialized photo lab. It did not require a prepaid yellow mailer or a drop-off at a supermarket kiosk. It did not require a week of anxious waiting to see if the exposure was correct. A family could record a birthday party, eject the heavy plastic cassette from the machine, push it directly into a deck sitting under the living room television, and watch the memory immediately. Most devastatingly to Kodak's entire business model, the economics of capturing time had changed. A standard VHS tape could record for 2 solid hours. A Super 8 cartridge recorded for exactly 3 minutes and 20 seconds. If an amateur videographer did not like what they had just recorded on tape, they simply pressed rewind and recorded over it. The magnetic tape was infinitely reusable. Chemical film, by the unalterable laws of physics, was permanent and expensive. Every time the mechanical shutter spun in a Super 8 camera, it consumed raw materials. By 1980, the combined cost of purchasing a Super 8 cartridge and paying for the required chemical processing was roughly $6 to $8. Shooting 2 hours of Super 8 film to match a single blank VHS tape would cost a family hundreds of dollars in film stock and processing fees alone. The psychological discipline of the 3-minute cartridge, the enforced curation that made Super 8 memories so powerful, suddenly felt like an expensive constraint. The American family archivist traded the vivid permanence of edited chemistry for the cheap, unedited convenience of endless recording. The physical system around the camera had begun to fail, and the invisible infrastructure was the first to feel the drought. By the early 1980s, the distribution failure was becoming impossible for the industry to ignore. The quiet shift first became visible in the retail spaces. In department stores across America, the sprawling aisles that had once been dedicated to Super 8 cameras, editors, splicers, and projectors were ruthlessly compressed. The heavy full-color pages of the Sears and Montgomery Ward catalogs, once the ultimate display window for the American middle class, pushed the mechanical film cameras to the back, replacing the prime pages with the newest electronics from Japan. A local camera dealer who used to sell 10 UMIG Super 8 projectors and a dozen Canon auto zoom cameras every month was suddenly selling 3. The specialized repair queue for complex mechanical Super 8 cameras, machines full of precision gears, belts, and claws, grew longer as spare parts became slightly harder to source from the manufacturers. Yet fewer customers bothered to authorize the repairs. Why spend $75 paying a technician to fix a mechanical rotary shutter when the entire market was moving toward electronics? The most fatal blow, however, fell upon the photomat kiosks and the massive regional processing labs. The chemical empire required massive, relentless volume to survive. Developing film is a delicate industrial process requiring vast vats of temperature-controlled chemicals that must be replenished constantly. Without millions of cartridges flowing through the system every week, the economies of scale that kept film processing affordable for the middle class instantly collapsed. As families switched to VHS, the daily drop-offs at the photomat dwindled. The ultimate surrender did not come from the consumer. It came from the empire itself. In 1984, sensing the complete collapse of its domestic hardware monopoly, Eastman Kodak panicked. They officially introduced the Kodavision 2000. It was a unified one-piece camcorder, integrating both the camera lens and the tape recorder into a single unit that required no tethered cables. But it did not shoot film. It recorded onto an 8mm videotape. By manufacturing and heavily marketing this device, Kodak effectively admitted defeat. They acknowledged that the American consumer no longer wanted chemistry. It was a profound structural betrayal of their own legacy. The company that had taught the world to trust the yellow cartridge was now begging the world to trust their electronics. It did not work. Kodak had no real expertise in consumer video, and Japanese electronics giants like Sony and Panasonic easily dominated the new camcorder era. The cultural habit of the projection night completely collapsed. The heavy mechanical projector was moved from the living room closet to the dark, dusty corners of the attic. The silver lenticular screen was folded up, never to be opened again, eventually sold for a few dollars at a neighborhood garage sale. The family album remained on the coffee table, but the family cinema was aggressively replaced by the glowing tube of the VCR. The old camera did not become useless. It simply became inconvenient. The catalog changed. The dealer stopped ordering. The photomat kiosk emptied. The chemical vats cooled. The television glowed. The tape was cheaper. The camera remained. The market moved on. The physical collapse of the domestic Super 8 hardware monopoly was absolute. Eastman Kodak eventually ceased all production of consumer Super 8 movie cameras, entirely conceding the hardware market to the Japanese electronics giants who had perfected the camcorder. The local photomat kiosks, once the bright yellow pillars of the American parking lot, were systematically bulldozed or converted into drive-through coffee stands. The sprawling regional processing labs drained their massive vats of developer chemistry, fired their technicians, and closed their doors forever. But the object itself did not vanish. It simply changed its status. It transitioned from a ubiquitous, mass-market consumer appliance into a highly specialized, deliberate mechanical tool. Kodak stopped making the cameras, but they never completely stopped manufacturing the film. Today, the afterlife of the Super 8 format is entirely driven by a fierce, dedicated community of visual artists, independent filmmakers, and professional archivists who actively reject the flawless, sterile nature of digital video. If you look at modern collector forums, specialized used camera shops, or global eBay listings, the surviving hardware commands immense respect. High-end Super 8 cameras from the 1970s, specifically the heavy metal German Niso models, the complex Canon AutoZoom line, and the legendary French Beaulieu 4008, frequently sell for premium prices, often exceeding their original retail value adjusted for inflation. They are not being purchased to sit quietly behind glass in a museum. They are being bought to work. A new generation of professional wedding videographers, skateboard documentarians, and independent music video directors actively seek out these aging mechanical bodies. In a modern media landscape where a pocket-sized smartphone can record flawlessly, stabilized, mathematically perfect 4K digital video for virtually zero marginal cost, high-end clients willingly pay thousands of dollars for 3 minutes of genuine, grainy, chemical Super 8 film. This survival is not driven by simple nostalgia. It is driven by immutable chemistry. It is the unfakeable, organic texture of microscopic silver halide crystals physically reacting to light. It is the mechanical heartbeat of the camera's internal claw, violently advancing the film strip exactly 18 times a second. It is the undeniable physical reality that light actually passed through a glass lens and touched a physical object, permanently altering its chemical structure. The Super 8 frame is a literal, physical artifact of the exact moment it recorded, rather than a mathematical digital approximation built out of binary code and compressed data. The physical sites of this medium have shifted, but the ecosystem has adapted. The neighborhood drugstore processing counter is gone, replaced by a tight network of specialized, high-end boutique film labs in cities like London and Burbank, California. Facilities like Pro 8mm do not merely develop the film, they have bridged the mechanical past and the digital present. They chemically process the 50-foot cartridges and then immediately scan the tiny, physical frames on million-dollar archival machines, converting the chemical reality into massive, high-resolution digital RAW files for modern non-linear editing. There is a surprising footnote to this survival. The persistence of the Super 8 cartridge is heavily indebted to the very top tier of the Hollywood cinema industry. When Kodak's motion picture film division faced total collapse in the early 2000s due to the digital cinema transition, powerful directors like Christopher Nolan, Quentin Tarantino, and J.J. Abrams successfully lobbied the major film studios to sign strict purchasing agreements, legally committing to buy millions of feet of Kodak 35mm and 65mm film every year. By forcing the massive Rochester manufacturing lines to stay open for Hollywood blockbusters, they inadvertently ensured that the specialized emulsions required to spool 50-foot Super 8 cartridges remained in continuous production. The legacy proved so resilient that in 2023, Eastman Kodak did something the industry thought was impossible. They released a brand new, highly engineered Super 8 camera. The modern iteration cleverly blends a digital LCD viewfinder with a traditional mechanical film gate, explicitly recognizing that the physical format still holds profound narrative power. The empire of the yellow box fell because it could not compete with the cheap, infinite convenience of magnetic tape and digital sensors. It demanded too much money, too much patience, and too much mechanical maintenance from the average consumer. But in its decline, it revealed the hidden cost of endless recording. When everything is captured flawlessly, nothing is curated. When a memory costs nothing to record, it loses a fraction of its weight. The Super 8 format survived precisely because it is difficult, expensive, and limited. It forces the operator to make a definitive choice about what truly deserves to be remembered. In a quiet, windowless studio, a modern filmmaker picks up a heavy, 50-year-old metal Bolio camera. They snap a brand new plastic Kodak Vision 3 cartridge into the back. The metal door clicks firmly shut. The photographer raises the viewfinder to one eye, focuses the heavy glass macro lens, and pulls the mechanical trigger. The internal motor whines. The claw engages the tiny sprocket holes, and the rotary shutter spins, still dividing time and light into physical memory, one frame at a time. See you in the next one.